Well, I'll introduce myself as if the room is full. That way we'll feel like maybe it is. So my name's Justin Patton, and I am professional staff. I've been working for the music department and some version of faculty development for about 10 years. But this is my first semester as an adjunct, so I'm brand spanking new, which means I get to share all these mistakes that I'm making, and might remind folks of some things that maybe they can remember from their early times as well. So this presentation could probably be 2 or 3 different presentations. I mean, there's probably enough material to talk about just one little section or another, and I'm going to smash them all together because I'm new, and that's what new people do. It's going to be looking at not only this course that I'm teaching, which is a fairly unusual course, but there's still going to be a lot of applications I think we can draw for a variety of different classes. I'm going to be looking at this class, but also these ideas from 2 people, Daniel Pink and Greg Lorenz. And that's why I say this could be multiple sessions, because I could do a session just on Dan Pink, I could do a session just on Greg Lorenz, or just on the class. And so this is going to be kind of shallow scraping of the surface, which is what my class actually is too, because it's an introduction to a fairly technical thing, and we're just barely skimming the surface. We could really go into it like it could be 3 or 4 classes. So it's going to be kind of funny how these 2 things sort of mirror each other, this session and my class. Experimental and experiential, it's both of those things, because we've got the freedom with this class to do about whatever we want. It's not a core requirement yet, but it's on the path to becoming a core requirement. So while it's an elective, we have the freedom to make these mistakes and try some of these things, and it won't be a big deal so much. That's the experimental part. It will stay experiential because of the nature of the class. And we're going to make these mistakes because we like trying new things. It's the thing that I think motivates me, and I think it motivates a lot of people. There's natural momentum behind anything that's new, even if it's bad. You know, a new restaurant opens in town, we all go because it's new, because there's the promise of it being good. But if you haven't been in Murray when a new restaurant opens, you'll be amazed at how it's like it is a cultural event. Everybody goes. It doesn't matter whether it's like the 5th Mexican restaurant in town to open, or whether it's a burger joint. It's the news for Murray, Kentucky. So you'll be amazed when you get to see this happen. But that kind of goes along with this idea that, you know, when something is new, there's a natural momentum for it. So you try to capture that momentum if you can, and help you go forward in a good way. Because if it's bad, that momentum obviously will die quickly. So it's gonna be a little bit disjointed, but I wanted to talk about this fall forum that we had a couple of years ago. I don't know if you happened to make that one, but I've ripped off these visuals straight from Dr. Greg Loren's presentation, a couple of them, because they're just kind of the key ideas. These are not super unique things. People have probably seen these before. This particular one is talking about student retention of information. And so we see lecture does not have the best retention if we look at this particular graphic. And this is an argument for moving toward more experiential things. Because we know lecture is not experiential, we know reading is not particularly experiential. Audio-visual starts to become maybe a tiny bit more, but as we keep moving down into these other larger retention rates, we see that these things become more and more experiential, whether you're having a discussion or whether you're actually practicing something, and especially if you're teaching other people. That's about as experiential as it gets, and we have this great retention rate of 90% there. So we're going to come back to that in a second. Also, on this experiential continuum, he has the things like computer-based learning and in-course activities. He qualifies those as experiential, but they're just barely scratching the surface. And as we go further down, we see things like placements and internships. And so the internship idea is a big one for this class that I'm teaching, and I'll explain that in just a minute. So the lower level learning objectives, the things that are easier to communicate, simpler to understand, we put those in the flipped content. So any lecture that I decide to use, that's going to be online. That's hopefully the best use of conveying simple ideas, is making sure that the online portion, the portion that they can access without me being around, is the simplest thing for them to do. So again, we're putting all the objectives that would fall under the category of remembering and understanding online, so that we can do more complicated things in class. A couple of examples there. The student will be able to label the controls on an audio interface. And you can see there MUS 337, this is called recording techniques. So we're talking about running recording equipment. It's very similar to a photo lab or any other type of fairly technical, even some of the sciences which would have labs. This is a similar approach to having equipment that you need to learn how to operate, and then understanding the principles though before you get there. For instance, again, the student will be able to describe in his or her own words gain staging. So these are the things that we're communicating with flipped content. And here's the example of the flipped content. I do lightboard videos, which is actually our room right next door here. Got a nice big board where I can draw just like a chalkboard, except for I'm looking at the camera. So it's really handy if you like using a chalkboard. It's a great way to make online content in the same kind of way. And I'm granting this a 20% retention rate here because of the audiovisual side of it. I've had students tell me that they really, this is not something that they're used to seeing. Not a whole lot of people are using the lightboard. And so when they see the instructor actually start drawing in thin air, which is what it looks like to them if they've never seen a lightboard video before, it's interesting for them at least. It's something new, and we know that new has a little bit of momentum with it. So I'm being gracious to myself and saying that's a 20% retention rate for this particular element of the flipped class. Of course, I'm doing screen captures, so I'm doing a voiceover on top of a screen. So that's also part of the lecture. If it's not a lightboard video, then it's screen capture. And they get to see the same software that I'm asking them to do lab exercises in as part of a lecture. Demonstration videos, these are actually videos where I'm doing something in the lab, and I'm giving that a 30% retention rate. Again, this is all going to be for the lower level learning objectives. And this is not always part of every single lecture, but it may be that one particular day we do more of one than the other, whatever seems to fit the topic for the day. And then lastly, I have slides posted, because a lot of students, they like the PowerPoint slides. I had a student that was helping me design this course as part of his internship over the summer, and he was adamant that we have slides up at some point. Now, one thing that I'm going to have to do with the slides, as we talk about how do I grade this flipped content in this classroom, we do have a weekly quiz, which is real standard for flipped classrooms, just to make sure that you're trying to make them watch the videos, and you're saying, okay, well, we're going to have a quiz, it's online Canvas quiz, just to make sure you've watched the video. I have been so gracious as to let them use the slides as an open book for the quiz. I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop doing that, because they're just using the slides without watching the video. And even though that's getting them to, maybe 70, 80%, they don't mind not getting an A if they can get a B or a C and not spend the time watching the video. So I'm going to have to start keeping the slides off Canvas until after the quiz, just to try to force these videos. I was really hoping I wouldn't have to do that, but it does seem like it's a problem. So this is one thing that I'm going to be tweaking for next semester. I'm not going to be giving them the slides as early on. So that covers real quickly the flipped part of the class. That's the part that runs itself. I don't have to do anything. That's all been done ahead of time. I could call in sick every day, and that would just run itself. And it covers the simpler things. And that's the experiential part that we're gonna continue the theme here, but I'm gonna add to that this new Daniel Pink side of things. And this is where it's really difficult to stay up with the idea of this science of motivation. I feel like this class should be naturally engaging because these students are upper level, they're music business students. This is the only class that they have that lets them get their hands on recording studio stuff. And if it was me, I would be all over that. But even my most engaged students pretty much only hit the level of which I would anticipate the average student to be at. A lot of the students don't seem to be nearly as engaged as I would have thought they would be. So I'm trying to use these motivation ideas from Dan Pink as a way to help them get more engaged. And at the end of the class is really the key to this part of it. But so Dan Pink, this is something that you can find. He's got a talk on TED Talks. This has been a while. He's really just about intrinsic motivation. He's trying to encourage people to find ways to appeal to the intrinsic motivation versus the traditional extrinsic, you're going to get an F unless you do this type of approach. And he talks about the candle problem. I'm not sure if you've heard of this candle problem or not before. It's a neat idea. Anytime that there's a complicated issue, a complicated problem, traditional rewards such as a bonus or even just recognition, if somebody says you've got to solve this difficult problem, and if you do it, you're going to get this much extra money for solving this problem. Those types of extrinsic motivators actually have a negative impact on how quickly somebody solves the problem. So the more complicated the problem is, the less extrinsic motivators work. Now, the flip side to that is, if you're on a factory line putting screws into the little metal box that's coming down the conveyor belt, that's when those extrinsic motivators work really well. If it's a simple issue, and that's why when you go to a factory and they say you get a bonus for getting 500 more screws in the boxes, it works then. But anytime you get a complicated issue, like trying to solve a problem that the solution is not readily apparent, these don't work anymore. And the candle problem demonstrates that. The candle problem gives people a box full of thumbtacks and a candle and some matches. And the task is find a way to stick the candle to the wall so that the wax doesn't drip on the table. And so people come up with all kinds of interesting ways to try to do this. And the answer is you dump the thumbtacks out of the box, pin the box to the wall with the thumbtacks, put the candle in, and then light it. And so the problem is, since the tacks are in the box, we don't see the box as a solution. It's called functional fixedness. We see the box as having a function. It's just to hold the tacks, and we don't think outside of that function of the box. Now, if you dump the tacks out and have all those pieces separated, it's a piece of cake. Everybody understands now that the tacks and the box are not linked, and they see the box as an extra item for solving the problem. So this is the exact, and it's been replicated for 40 years. So we know from Glucksberg in 1962 all the way to the Federal Reserve Bank that has done scientific research into this area. We know this is a fact, and yet we haven't found a good way in a lot of cases. Now, Google may have. A lot of these very forward-thinking companies that live in what almost seems like a utopia to us here in higher ed, they've found ways to do this. But trying to tap into intrinsic motivators for our students is really tough. We can paint pictures of how awesome something's going to be. We can appeal to their logic, but what are our actual tools aside from extrinsic motivators of grades, and that's about it. He goes on to talk about how Wikipedia destroyed Microsoft Encarta. And Microsoft did everything right with Encarta by hiring all the right people and putting all the money behind it. And Wikipedia just said, here you go, it's open source, everybody can participate. And Wikipedia became a giant and Encarta went away. Now, we all know that there are problems with Wikipedia, but as far as people being excited about it, people being engaged with it, people coming together to work on it, it was free, no one was getting paid, it was just this collaborative effort that was intrinsically motivating to the people, whereas Encarta didn't have that. So what do intrinsic rewards involve? This is where Dan Pink comes down. He says there's autonomy, which is the freedom to do whatever you feel called to do, the freedom to make progress in the way that you think you have the best chance to make progress. There's mastery, which is the sense of being truly adept at whatever it is you're doing in your field. You want to be one of the best, if not in the world, in the state, if not in the state, at your institution, or at least one of the best that your students have ever seen. We want to be good at what we do. It's just fulfilling. And then, of course, purpose. So in the same way that we had the experiential ideas, we also have these intrinsic reward ideas that we can try to apply to specific things that we're doing in class. And that's where my second idea comes in. The higher learning level objectives happen in class, and the class is basically what I call a simulated internship. So these are the instances where the students actually have to perform, and they have to perform having already supposedly understood these lower level learning objectives from the flipped part of the class. Defend their choice of components, modify these components in order to make the client happy. So this is what my room looks like. There are two classrooms. Neither one of them is as big as this. I've got smaller rooms than this, but there's two right next to each other. And I'm in one. There's a little airlock between us, and then my TA's in the other one. So I have about 5 students in one side, and my TA has about 4 or 5 in the other. So we have a cap of 10 people in the class, which means 5 students in each room. And what we do here, we have one group with me on Tuesday, the other group is with my TA, and then the next week we flip around, and so on and so forth. One thing that I have noticed, and I've adjusted for this, I tend, of course, to we do the exact same thing every week with twice, one with Group A, one with Group B. So I do the same thing, my TA does the same thing, but the students switch. And so they get something different on Tuesday versus on Thursday. I tend to do better on Thursday because I've already run it once on Tuesday. And I realized I don't want the same group always getting my best performance. So we make sure and switch the groups around to where they stall just long enough to stagger it. So if I get one group on Tuesday and then the Thursday group gets my better performance, the next time around, the group that got my better performance ends up with me on Tuesday because I'm probably going to stink a little bit on Tuesday again since it's my first run through. So this is handy for me as a teacher because I get a chance to teach the exact same thing twice in one week to the same students. Eventually, they all come around. But it's very easy, and since I'm only teaching one class, somebody who's teaching the same course, multiple sections, has this experience as well. Maybe they have one section on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and another section on Tuesday, Thursday. For whatever reason, it's great to be able to tweak things and learn from what you just did, and you realize that wasn't as good as it could be, so Thursday becomes better. And I think the students see that as well. What is this simulated internship? So one of the things that we do, my TA is what I call the weekly lab project, and he takes the students through this activity over in the green room. Usually he grabs one and walks them through while the other students take notes on it. And then the rest of the students have to go in later that day or later that week and perform this on their own, this specific lab exercise. And of course he'll pick a different student every time to work with so that everybody gets a chance to have their time with him. And then there we have the solo weekly lab project. So I call that semi-autonomy because they're not truly free. They're not getting to do whatever they want, but they're on their own, but they're not getting to do whatever they want. They have to follow this plan. And we do have a video up in case they get lost. There's a video online that is a step-by-step through this thing, so they can refer to that if they need that. We still want to move toward autonomy, though, but we're not quite there yet. What I do over in the room is a project that very much mirrors what they're doing in the green room, but with an entirely different scenario. So the principle is the same. The core idea is the same. The method is all the same idea, but we're switching them up so that they have to apply that in a new setting. So they have to demonstrate that they understand this idea that we've laid out in the green room, and they can apply it in a new setting. And this is really just like having two labs, or if we had one big lab with two stations. So we grade this simulated internship. The solo lab is pass-fail, and the rest of it's not graded. The rest of it is simply just if we take attendance, but if there's they just have to be there to participate, and that means that we're just working on performance only, and I'm not actually evaluating that performance. I'm just running them through this treadmill of trying to get their hands on as much equipment as possible and doing as much as they possibly can. It's like an internship in that the students have told me what they get in real internships, and a lot of times they can be fairly dissatisfied with their internships because they end up sweeping the floor, taking out the trash, going and getting coffee, and just sitting back and watching. And what they really want is hands-on. And so what we're trying to do is actually give them something like what they say that they want out of their real internships, a real hands-on opportunity here. So if we get through all this stuff, the lower level, the higher level learning objectives, and they get up to a certain point, then we finally, at the end of the semester, we give them the opportunity to truly pick a project that they can be entirely in charge of. And that's where we actually have the autonomy coming in at the end. So, got a picture of one of my students here. We call it a student's choice project, where they can take what they've learned and they can apply it. In this case, this young man is helping to record the racer band in Lovett Auditorium. And so in some cases we have to help with that a little bit. I have to be marginally on top of that, but dangling this carrot of it's up to you. You've got a local garage band that you want to record for your own purposes and put something up on Facebook, okay, but in order to get there, we've got to get through everything else first, and then we're going to apply that. So we're calling this legitimate autonomy, which would be Dan Pink's ultimate carrot for motivating the student, saying that this is your chance to do whatever you want, and it's going to be good if everything leading up to it, you put the work in on everything leading up to it. I can't tell you how that's worked out yet because we haven't made it there in the semester. I suspect there's going to be people who do great, and I suspect there's going to be people who just don't even have a clue as to what they want to do with their ultimate freedom. And if that's the case, we'll provide some assistance in helping them decide what to do. So, is this a good fit for other courses? Probably not, unless they really mirror the technical tendencies of this course. I could see ideas from this working for anybody that has a lab. I don't see it working for a history course probably, or Humanities 101, unless you were just going to do something really wild and crazy for a week or two and see what you could pull out of it. And so I've already seen in this class that it's hard to find ways to motivate people intrinsically. It does help that you can be a big cheerleader. It does help that if they come in and they can see that you think it's the greatest thing in the world, or if you can give them access to something that they really respect, as far as a great computer or a great program or a great piece of software, something that they know is industry standard. But there are those that are going to remain a mystery. Some people are just very low energy, and it seems like no matter what you can't seem to tap anything that gets them going. Also, my groups are radically different. I split these two groups up. One group is clearly the superior group, while the other group is clearly the party group. And you have to stay on the party group like you wouldn't believe, while as the group that is much more self-motivated, they make much more progress. And I probably should have paid more attention, I guess, to how I split the groups up. But sometimes you don't know who's a party person until after you've had them for a while. And I don't like the idea of splitting the groups up at this point, because I feel like that could be a morale killer, to say, okay, you're out of that group because, by golly, you're not, it's like slapping their hand and sticking them somewhere else. So I'm going to go ahead and ride this out with my odd groups, and see what I can do about that in the future. Like I mentioned earlier, I do have one student who is probably my most motivated student. And I believe that they bring a lot of that to the table. I didn't do anything to change them radically, but hopefully, some of the things that we're doing will help them be even more motivated than they might have been otherwise. So the individual brings a lot of this to the table, and there's no way you can make somebody motivated who's bound and determined not to be motivated. I'd like to keep trying these ideas and seeing what else I can come up with this semester. But so far, it's been a little bit, I had the wind taken out of my sails a little bit. I was hoping that this intrinsic motivation was going to do more than I think that it's done. And so far, it hasn't been. It's been good for some people, but it hasn't been as good as I wanted it to be. And we'll see how that goes.
I have a suggestion on the group thing.
Yes.
It's hard. I can't necessarily do it with my classes because my classes are all either online or ITV. And my ITV classes, I can't switch the groups up because I may only have one person in Fort Campbell and one person in Paducah. But you can say partway through the semester, you're going to rearrange the groups, because in the real world,
Right.
you're not working with the same people all the time, and that may shake up the, okay, now we're going to do a real world situation, we're going to switch up the groups, you're working with different people because you need to learn how to work with different people.
Right. And if I told them that going in, it wouldn't be a shock. And that's.
I mean, you could even do it as a shock, because sometimes in the real world, people just quit.
Right.
People are hired.
Right. That's true. That's true.
Just throw that, okay, new world situation, real world situation, I'm going to shake up the groups.
Right. Right. That's not a bad idea. I had been trying. I'm handling them a little bit with kid gloves,
Yeah.
and but yeah, this is a good idea. I could do that, and they would, as long as it looked fairly objective, where you just kind of reshuffle.
Right. And do it like pick an A or B out of a
Right.
or something like that.
Right.
Because at the beginning of the semester, you don't necessarily know their personalities. You don't know who's the party group and
Right.
who's not. But when they get out into the real world, they may be the only partier in a group of serious workers.
Right.
They have to learn to work.
Right. Yeah.
Serious workers.
That's a great suggestion. I think I will do that.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing too. It could be a simple, process as she was saying. And when I have visited classes during the small group instructional diagnosis, and I listen to students in the classes, sometimes when they're in the set groups, they suggest to me to tell the instructor to switch us up a bit. We want to learn from the other students in the class. So
Right.
if you explain why, in addition to, if you give them good reasons to, and then make an objective switch, like a randomized thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you randomize it and you end up with the same situation, then that's just,
Yeah.
Just try again.
Right.
Just make it. They don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen.
Right. What happened is that a lot of these guys in the party group ended up it just happened that they ended up in this group, but they were all part of the same of another group in a previous class coming in. So they had already established their identity as a group from this other class, and so they just got transported into mine by sheer chance. No, no, I split the groups in the middle and they had come in and sat down randomly. They were, but they came in at different times. So they, so the seats were largely it's a tiny room, and as people came in, they did sit next to each other if they could, and some of them weren't there for the split. So that I added them to the groups on the second or third day when they added the class, and I said, okay, well, you're just with this group or you're just with that group. And it just ended up all these guys were together. So, yeah, we need to shake it up.
And that's part of real life.
Right.
So, if they give you a group, well, you know what? In the real world,
Right. Right.
you work with people who work differently than you. And I teach the motivation
Mm-hmm.
because I teach the HR class.
Oh, okay.
And public administration. I have a lot on intrinsic and extrinsic. And you have to figure out who in your group is what, and you have to learn how to work with
Right. Right.
those people. And it sounds like you've got a very extrinsic motivated group there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, they do. They need that. And I want the world to be simple. I want everybody to be mostly intrinsically motivated because that's how I am. And so it's like, well, I can make sense to somebody that thinks like me, but if they don't, then you've got to look at something different.
So to what extent do you tell the students what you're doing in terms of the strategy that you're using? Do you tell them, oh, well, this is an
No.
experiential course, or you're just going through?
I tell them things like it's a priority for me that when you're in the class, we are working on things with your hands. I want you touching the equipment. The whole point in having the lecture flipped is so that I'm not talking more. I'm talking less, and that means that we need to have time for you to be getting into these things. Now that said, you still end up talking quite a bit, but not as much. I try to sit back and ask them to do. I play the role of the client in a lot of cases, and I ask them to do this for me. You do this for me. Well, I want this now. I want that now. You do this for me. And so I'm sitting in the client spot, and they're sitting where I would be sitting, trying to, function as I would be functioning if I was in charge. And of course, they have to take turns because we only have one power chair. It's not like we don't have multiple stations where each person can function in that one station. Like if we all had a laptop here and I was leading everybody through everything, you would all have your own station as the laptop, but it's not set up that way at all. So I have to say, okay, switch, and then somebody else sits down, somebody else takes over. So at some point, even though we're cutting the number down, since I have a TA, because there's no way we could do that with 10 people. Then you got 9 people waiting for a turn, and your time gets right. So at least this way, we've got either 4 or 5 people, and they get more time in that way. But they're still waiting. If they're not engaged, which they should be, because there's plenty to be learned from paying attention. But it changes. Every time that they come up, we're at a different point. So the person that takes over is now doing something slightly different than the last person. So they're not necessarily getting an equal amount of time on the same tasks, which is another good reason to be paying attention.
Do you maintain your normal personality as the client?
Yeah.
I would switch that up too.
That's a good idea.
I would play the very, very easygoing client.
Uh-huh.
And I would play the very difficult client. Because once again, in the real world, not everybody's going to be
Right.
the easygoing.
That's for sure. Yeah. That could be a lot of fun. I should try that.
And just don't tell them ahead of time. What you're doing, talk it over with your TA and say just randomly
Mm-hmm.
one day just be belligerent and you're not doing it right. That's not what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll be paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed, this would not work if it was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. It only works because it's a Tuesday, Thursday, and we can bounce back and forth between me and the TA. I'm sure there's a way to make it work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but it's really easier to do it with just 2. And since it's my first time through the class, it's the first time we've ever offered the class. It's my first time teaching it. It's their first time, taking anything like it. It's been helpful to have it, where I can take a stab at it and realize that I didn't do as good as I needed to and improve for Thursday.
Well, speaking of improving, do you plan to probably give them a little 3-question mid-survey for them to answer?
Yeah, in fact, we have a couple of times that I have set aside for actual. We'll do a survey, but I'm actually just group discussion too, where in fact, next week we're breaking out of the 2 group structure, and the whole group is going over to Lovett Auditorium, where we're going to be doing some things as a larger group. But before we get into that, we're going to have a sort of a review and an evaluation discussion. So we'll see what people have to say. But yeah, I hadn't thought about that's a good idea, a survey.
Yeah, and it could be a quick, simple question. We call it stop, start, and continue.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things you'd like me to stop? Because it's probably not working for you. So
Mm-hmm.
what would you like me to start? Because you probably think it might help your learning.
Right.
You focus all the question on learning, and what would you like me to continue? Because it's helping your learning. So 3 easy questions. You frame it around stop, start, continue. So
Mm-hmm.
they get to, and it's quick.
Right. Yeah, I have asked that in one-on-ones with people, but I haven't done it systematically.
Yeah, it is.
It was a Google questionnaire where it's anonymous.
Right.
Be more comfortable responding that way.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because even with the FBC workshops, I won't let Kami send out an evaluation for the workshop if it's less than 3 people.
Right.
Like if it's a workshop where probably 2 attended today and another 5 attended, and together by the end of the week she could send it out. That's fine. But if it's a workshop where just, a couple people attending, I won't let her send that out because I'm not sure how objective people are going to feel,
Right.
answering the question. The same thing with the, the face-to-face thing. So I'm
Right.
here for it.
Then you don't have to wait till the end of the semester to readjust. You can adjust as you go along.
Right.
I won't do it in my online classes because they tell me there's too much work. So your graduate students deal with it.
You do the survey?
What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Even if it's 3 questions.
Because that's what they'll tell me. Too much work. So I have to do 2 chapters a week.
I think, you know, people will say a lot of things and they may have justifiable reason to do that. But I wouldn't let that stop me if I am interested, because there might be 1 or 2 students that could perhaps give you. There are always exceptions,
Yeah,
and you could definitely learn from
that's true.
those. So no matter how big the group is, and no matter how you hear the majority, sometimes the people silently there, they may have a different perspective. So
Well, and I'm on the opposite side because I had all these warnings from people. First time teachers always make their classes too hard. So be careful that you don't make your class too hard. And I'm seeing that I haven't. And so I think if I were to do a stop, start, continue, I would be. I don't think anybody would tell me that it's too hard. So it'd be interesting to see what they did say. Because I chose to err on the side of
yeah.
easy to start this off, since it's kind of an experiment right now. I definitely know that I'm going to be tightening things up for next semester.
Okay. So how often do you use the light board?
I have about 4 or 5 lectures where I use the light board. And then, so more than screen capture. I've used it more than I've done screen captures, or about even, at least 50%. It seems like maybe a little bit more.
And the other question I have for you, you had mentioned the videos that the students watch, and they were able, or they felt comfortable doing the exam with just the PowerPoint. Um, were you saying that you know that they were literally missing key skills that you were mentioning in the video?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
because I
And
was wondering if it's a case where if they can read the PowerPoint and get what you were perhaps saying, or
they get a C or a B. So
okay,
they're okay with getting a C. If they can, it's that idea. It's the jumping through hoops mentality. It's like, as long as I can pass, why would I do any extra work?
Can you make your questions more related to what you're saying as
Oh
opposed to
yeah,
what they're reading?
yeah.
When they start failing, then maybe.
Right. Well, what I was planning on doing was just not providing the PowerPoint until after the quiz is done, and then it's there as a review for later, for the final or what have you. And that way
They can't. They have to watch the
yeah, they've got to take notes. And it would be quicker for them to take notes and then reference their notes during the quiz than try to like scrub around in the video on YouTube.
and then there are implications to that too, because then you have different types of students. Like, and I'm not talking about the whole learning style thing. That's not what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about students who, if for example you had a case where you had accessibility
Right.
issues where, okay, it could be where they literally have to listen to you talk and stuff like that. So
Right. Right.
you'd have to think about that too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I haven't done closed captioning on those either. Which, of course, I have such a small number of students. I know if anybody needs it, but
right.
Isn't there a way, I think I did it when I was doing courses on Coursera, where you can incorporate the question into the video.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then
So
they have to answer they have to watch the video to answer the
yeah.
question.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there are a couple technologies that do that. I used to use Zaption to do that, but then Zaption went away, and they suggested, when I went on the campus network and different people were suggesting different things. Um, I have the names of those software if you're interested. I don't remember all of them, but that's an excellent point. I know Kaltura, but it depends on what's here at the university and what's out there that's free. So I think AppyChat was one of them, but I don't want you to. I would rather to
Mm-hmm.
show you if you're interested
Okay.
in
Yeah.
some of the things. But that's an excellent idea, because it really makes them one thing to have them watch the video, and then they could still not do well on the test.
Right.
Because while they were watching the video, they were not learning actively.
Right.
So that really helps too.
How long are your videos?
They're always, shorter than 30 minutes, but some of them are, I think my shortest is probably 10 or 12.
Because I think I've read somewhere where if you maybe do 3 or 4 shorter ones,
Right.
and at the end of each one put a question,
Mhm.
and that's the quiz.
Right. That
And
might,
they lose. I mean, they used to complain when Sesame Street first came out that the problem with Sesame Street was that everything was so short that kids weren't developing a long attention span. Well, now we're definitely in that age because it's all
right.
right
Right.
here. So you have to create it, the video,
Mm-hmm.
to fit what they'll do.
Right. Yeah, a lot of my videos are 13 or 15 minutes long. And I think the longest one may even be 20
Right. Or make
minutes.
them like 6 and then divide it, and then add your quiz questions at the end of each video.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to watch the video.
Right. Right.
Yeah, you could probably stretch it to 10 if you want.
Mm-hmm.
It seems as if you really feel you want to put, if you have to stretch it to 10, but try to. I think that's an excellent question. You try to keep it down, 5 to 10 minutes. It may look a little bit, unreasonable to do on your part, like, oh, but on the students, from their experience, they will actually benefit from it too. So they're like, oh, I could spend 5 minutes on this.
Yeah.
Or 10
So they
minutes
could do
or-
5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there.
Otherwise, they have to, and sometimes the video has to load, depending on, how much bandwidth they have. and,
Right.
Oh, it's loading, it's
Time
loading.
Warner's working this week.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they have to go through, so.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I could definitely do that.
But they have to have watched them all and done the quizzes by a certain time.
Right. Right. Yeah, I usually have it, where it's like they have about 6 days to
Yeah.
to do it. And typically they do it about 2 hours before class.
If you break it up, then they may start earlier.
Right.
They may not. But
Right. Yeah, I had one student knock it out like as soon as it was available. The quiz for last week, she did it like within 5, hours of it being available. And then nobody else did it until the day it was due. And that's when they all came, in, and like literally, in the last couple of hours before it closed.
that's pretty standard demographics for a class.
Right, right. I just had this idea that these are music business students, and surely they want, of all the possible. I mean, there's copyright law. This is a recording studio versus copyright law. I thought surely they would be more interested in, setting up a microphone for Beyonce than but. So it's my education. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have a bunch of literature on the experiential learning?
We have some literature kicking around. I'm sure we've got books that various speakers have let us keep, but I don't in my collection. What I do is I go back and watch a lot of the videos that we've just archived from fall forums, spring speakers. I was there for a lot of them, and then I go back and I revisit those.
So I got the Golden Key Fellowship for this year, and I'm doing mine on experiential learning in MPA programs, particularly for adult learners, international students, and online students, and nothing worked.
Oh, man.
So I have a box full of research. We'll see what I end up with.
Yeah.